Welcome. Surviving the holidays, a nervous system approach. We're going to talk about the holiday season. We're going to talk about our nervous systems, and we're going to talk about how to find space for you and what your needs are. We'll do that by backing up a bit, talking about how we gather information from our nervous system, what our nervous system is trying to communicate to us, and what we can do to bring that into balance at large. And then we'll kind of work on some ideas for in the moment of how you might do that. So hello, who the heck am I? I'm Kelsey. I'm a registered clinical counselor. I live and work in North Vancouver, BC. And I've been a trauma counselor for many, many years. And I'm on a newer journey learning about my own neurodivergence and that of my family's. And all of that plays into, my clinical hat, my personal hat, into these workshops that I'm running. So I'm so glad that you're here to join us today. And in my clinical work, I'm the clinical director of a counseling agency called Healing Spaces. We're in Kamloops, North Vancouver, and Vancouver, and we're a trauma-informed, neuro-affirming, anti-oppression group counseling practice, all the good stuff, and very, very heart-centered. Just invite you all to join me for a moment here as we do a land acknowledgement. And if you're in a different place, of course, you can honor the land that you're on. I live, work, and play on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I benefit greatly from the preservation of this land that has been cared for by these people since time immemorial. And I am committed to doing my part to heal historic and ongoing harms done to these people and to this land. I invite you all just to join me for a moment. Thank you. Starting to offer almost monthly kind of workshop-y things, so I'm really excited about that. January is going to be on pathological demand avoidance, which is a neurodivergence. And then February, we're going to talk about post-traumatic growth. And then in April, we're going to talk about autistic burnout. And I have some fun ideas. I know these sound fun, right? I'm excited. This is my playground. Some other fun ideas. So those will all be free. So you can check out those ongoing events for sure to see what's coming up. And then we have some paid programming as well that I'm just starting to open up as well. Fear and Courage. Oh man, that's been a passion project of mine. All about honoring your fear, not trying to override it, but honoring your fear, that central nervous system, honoring and integrating your courage. So if you're curious, feel free to check those out. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to talk all about some good stuff today. About holiday stress, how it's real, where it comes from. We're going to use a nervous system lens to understand, again, what's going on in your system, what's the information your nervous system is telling you. And then we'll talk about taking a moment to consider other options this holiday season. What are the possibilities to honor yourself more and your family unit more? And then some practical tools for today and how to integrate all this information. So let's dive in. We expect ourselves to sparkle even when we're out of batteries. Now, this can be true so many times a year, but it feels extra true at the holiday season. There's this be merry and joyful ideology that's out there. And yet, on top of regular life, we have added stressors and have been kind of head down since September. And so it's a tricky time to add more sparkle when we're feeling low. Pretend there's more sparkle there without honoring the low battery that we might also be having. So holiday stress is real. And where does it come from? If I remember my high school math correctly, there's an x-axis, I think, and a y-axis. So I tried to put the personal pieces on the x-axis and then the social expectations, the be merry, on the y-axis. So take a look at this. And some of the expectations might be external, some might be internal as well. This desire to create a specific type of holiday season or honor a specific tradition that's been at play in your family for a while, even though it might be difficult. This year, we still kind of try to Traditions are annual, so we're trying to honor those. So some of them might be kind of internal pressure as well, but it's good to take a look at this and see what I missed and see what stands out to you. I do want to highlight too the gender roles and the emotional labor in general, and then specifically at the holiday season too. Pressures to find the perfect gift, the social media worthy images. But what about personal differences or personal needs and preferences for ourselves, for our family unit? Maybe there's financial strain or grief. Maybe there's family trauma and we're expected to interact with some of those people, and that's a bit tricky. Maybe we have sensory needs or differences in our family unit, or our personal values are just a bit different from kind of that consumerism ideology. And so how do we do this dance? Those expectations, like I talked about, right, societally, and maybe those are also internal. I really want to honor this tradition, or I really want to be able to do this thing despite the complexities that are going on in that moment. And so it can be tricky with all these expectations really, really high. There isn't a lot of space to honor differences, especially at this time of the year. It's like everything is amplified, right? And those internal pieces, and those personal preferences or needs, familial needs, they can be masked. And then so we have that masking at the most wonderful time of the year. We're supposed to be merry and sparkly, and yet we have all this pressure inside that we can't really speak of or can't take up that same amount of space. And so that, again, creates more tension. So looking at our central nervous system, I don't know if you saw this poster. I had so much fun making it. Nervous system guide to surviving the holidays. So it's playful intentionally, but it talks about the different ways our systems respond when they're under a lot of stress. So you might be familiar with all of them or most of them. So that fight response, there's that resistance. Flight, I need to get out of here. Freeze, I can't move, I feel immobilized. Fawn, I'm people pleasing or not speaking up. And fold, everything stops. So you might have a tendency towards one or another more, or in a certain situation. Maybe you have a fight tendency with X person, and then you have a fawn tendency with Y people. And so it might not be the same everywhere. I think sometimes there's an idea that we only do one response, but we might have a tendency towards one, or we might have a tendency towards different ones in different areas. And that fold, that flop, as it's called too, that feels like there's nothing left. Our central nervous system has been going for so long, trying to keep up, and there's nothing left. So everything goes still and shuts down. So I want you to think of a time when things were going great. You were in the flow in life. It was really great. Think about a time when things were really hard and what that was like, how you were doing, what was going on around you. And then where are you today? Maybe in the middle somewhere, maybe in one of those polarities. So keep that in mind as we move into talking about the window of tolerance, which you might be familiar with. The window of tolerance, that term was coined by Bruce Perry. And then Stephen Porges and Deb Dana, who created polyvagal theory, kind of elaborated upon it. So that window of tolerance, that optimal zone for connecting, socializing, learning, growing, all those things where we feel safe, that fluctuates. So if you can look at my fingers here. So when you're in a place in life where you're feeling balanced and well and things are going really great, your window of tolerance is bigger. And so your ability to tolerate distress is more. So if you have a situation at work that's stressful, or if you have a situation in your personal life that's stressful, you have capacity to navigate that with a bit more bending of the knees, if we will, a bit more creativity, and it's not going to erode you as significantly. When we're under more stress, our window of tolerance, what we are able to tolerate, becomes smaller. And so we tend to pop into that hyper arousal or hypo arousal place more frequently. Why is this helpful and important? Well, it can help us understand what's going on. If we tend to be bickering more with a certain person in our life, if we're feeling like we can't focus on work, or I can't organize a grocery list, I am spinning on thinking about how to navigate these people in my house for the holidays, or whatever the case may be, it helps us understand what's going on. It helps us gather information about how we're responding, and hopefully it helps you tuck away any self-judgment, or at least challenge that self-judgment, because that is going to only add more stress onto you. So when we understand that the more stress we're under, the more likely we are to pop into one of these nervous system responses because of the stress on our system, we can, again, gather more information about what's going on for us, and then maybe we can move to support our nervous system with what it needs. And what might that look like? That will look like potentially integrating the opposite. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you are feeling really overwhelmed and really stressed, and you pop into hypoarousal. You pop into a flight mode. I got to get out of here. So maybe that's you're spending some extra time socializing. It's probably not that. Maybe that is what it is. Or you're like just scrolling your phone to decompress, or you're hyperfixated on work or something like that, and you're escaping. You need to get out of here. All the stresses that are happening, you need to just like get out. Or maybe you just feel tension in your chest and you feel like you can't breathe. That also could be a stress response, that kind of flight. I feel tight. I feel trapped. I can't get out of here. So what we can do in that instance, we almost want to integrate the opposite. So let's imagine we've popped into this hyper arousal place, a flight response. What we want to do is down regulate our system. So that might look like standing outside in the crisp cold air and taking a few breaths. It might mean we look out the window and we watch the rain drip off the tree branches. It might mean we make some water or a cup of tea and we intentionally drink it very slowly. And what we're trying to do is cue our system that we're slowing down. We're trying to cue our system that we're safe and we're okay. In the same way, if you're in a hypoarousal place and you've just frozen and you can't move, definitely taking a moment to ground and then integrating the opposite. So that might mean you need to upregulate a little bit. And what that might mean is you want to go for a fresh air walk perhaps, or at least some stretching and some movement, do some joy breath. If you know yoga at all, you want to upregulate your system again to try to find that balance. Now, I want to say that with the caveat of this is not one more thing to do. This is something that feels accessible and possible. So if you feel frozen, like you can't move, and going for a walk is not a possibility, it might mean you lie on the floor and do some stretches and just connect with your body and a little bit of movement. It might mean if you are scrolling your phone that you just stop and take a breath if you're in that kind of busy place, and just try to take a moment, a micro moment, to slow your system down. So this is not a tool for adding more stress, folks, not a tool for that, and not a tool for more self-criticism or more self-judgment. It's really a tool to understand what's going on. We can bear witness to how our system is responding, and then we can see if there's a way to integrate an accessible amount of the opposite. Questions, comments, witty remarks, please reach out. All right. Regulation is not always being calm. Regulation is not always being calm. Your body is responding for a reason. Also, not realistic to be regulated all the time. Really important for you to know that. Not possible, not human, not real, especially under a lot of stress, right? Our bodies are responding for a reason. It's cueing us that there's stress going on. And so we need to respond and address that stress. We don't want to just override and pretend it's not there. Our body's cueing us. What can we do? I thought I had another slide in here, but I don't. So I'll just talk about this really, really loosely. Following that polyvagal theory, regulation is being able to be flexible in states. So what that means is you might go into that flight response, that hypervigilance, hyper aroused place, and then you might be able to come back and feel okay, connect with a couple people, and then you might be really tired in the evening and relax. But regulation is being flexible. Where we become dysregulated is when we kind of get stuck or trapped in one of those states and we can't really move. So that's the piece that I wanted to say about regulation. It's not about always being calm. It's actually about being flexible. Can I move between states? Can I bend my knees a little bit here and adapt and adjust to what's going on? Okay. So let's take a moment to consider some other options. What if we took something off our plate instead of adding more? What if we honored a part of us and let that take up more space and kind of compensated accordingly? So if we're experiencing chronic health, maybe we honor that this year, and that's okay. We need accommodations for our bodies or our systems. That's okay. Maybe if we're going through some grief, we find a way to incorporate that person that we're missing into the holiday season in a really warm, loving way. Maybe if we're like feeling a bit more introverted because there's so much extroverted energy, we say no to a social event or engagement, or we leave early, and that's okay. Is there a way to honor ourselves more within this web and this map of a lot of moving pieces and a lot of stress? How can you honor you and your family more and move towards balance as a unit? Maybe you don't make any social media worthy images this year. So take a moment and reflect on what's important to you and your family this year. I know for my family, I have two very sensitive PDA little guys, and we've had to really adjust and adapt, first of all, what we thought the holidays would look like, but even how we interact with other people around us. And they're not always happy and pleased, but our family system, our family unit, and their sensitive little bodies and needs take priority. And so we have tried our best to find a way to honor them and still weave in some holiday pieces that feel accessible and important. So taking a moment and reflecting on not what I need to do, what I have to do, but reflecting internally about what's important to myself and to my family unit. I think about this as living inside out as opposed to outside in. So is there a way to challenge social expectations or challenge that be merry attitude? Maybe you have a couple people in your life that you can be honest with about the stressors that are going on. Honoring your grief, honoring your safety planning if you have somebody in your life that there is maybe some family trauma or some intergenerational trauma, and maybe there's a way to do some safety planning within a family interaction. Maybe you still want to go, but maybe you do it differently. Maybe you allow yourself to extrovert when you have that extra energy. Maybe you honor the neurodivergence that's in your family. And maybe you rethink gift giving in general, because that's okay too. So just rethinking these pieces as opposed to adjusting who we are to meet the expectations that are outside. We take a moment to pause and reflect on who we are, what's important to us, what our needs and preferences are for ourselves, our family system, and then how we can influence the outside world, how we can do things differently in the outside world based on where we are. So living inside out as opposed to outside in. So the tension becomes about hearing your own voice and be willing to take a chance on doing it differently. Take a chance, right? Like and there's a typo there, sorry team. It's not perfect, it's not smooth. And perhaps this year for you, it might be possible that to do things differently feels like extra labor because you're going to have to explain. And so it's just like, we're just going to bear down and get through. And then we're going to take this information and do it differently next year. That's okay too. We don't want to add more on, but are there ways that are accessible to hear your own voice? And maybe this year is just taking note of where that tension is, where those stress responses are, and then you can do it differently next year. Or maybe you can do it differently this year. Maybe there are some big pieces or small pieces that you can do differently because they just don't work for you anymore, and that's okay. This is in my Fear and Courage course, and I talk a lot about living inside in versus inside out versus outside in, but I just wanted to weave it in here because it felt so appropriate. So Viktor E. Frankl, he's a Holocaust survivor and author, philosopher. I love his books. And he talks about, this is a quote of his, he talks about between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I feel like how that applies here is, as opposed to keeping going and just doing all the things because you feel like you need to, or you have to, or something external or internal tells you need to. We instead slow down. We notice our stress level. We notice our system's responses in those stress responses: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop. We notice those things as they happen. And that is giving us information that something's not working here. Something isn't feeling okay. Something is too much. And this isn't okay. So how can we slow down that moment, take a bit of inventory, and then see if we can find the space to choose a response as opposed to like in that auto response place to do things differently. And in that, lies our growth and our freedom. Again, not easy. Not pretending this is easy. However, if you're willing to take a chance, it can be kind of cool. And as you do it more, you'll build that muscle and then do it more and more and more. But at the beginning, what might feel accessible is something teeny, teeny, tiny, and that's okay too. How can we make this small and accessible, not big and more stressful? Okay, so tools for today. You don't need to do everything. Just begin with one itty bitty thing, one small thing. So a couple tools that might be helpful. Starting, we name it to tame it. So again, what are my tendencies to, how do I respond to stress? Do I fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop? So I notice that that's happening. I notice tension rising in my body. I feel tight in my chest. I notice that I want to snap at somebody at the store or in my personal life. I notice that I can't respond to any text messages, or I can't even organize a grocery list. Great. That's not a place for judgment. That's a place for noticing what's happening. Something is going on in my system and giving me information that whatever is happening right now is not working and it's too much. So maybe I need to take a pause and slow down and come back later. Or maybe I need to take a pause and reflect on how to do things differently. So when we feel those sensations coming up in our system, how can I name it to tame it? How can I talk about what's happening in that moment? The hardest part of this is noticing when it's going on. That is the hardest part. So what might happen as you're practicing this, as you, maybe you're at the store and you feel like snappy and you snap at somebody, a clerk at the store, and then you come home and you're like, oh, I did it. I totally snapped at that person at the store. Okay. And then next time you might be like mid snap and then you're like, okay, it's happening again. And then next time you might feel, oh, I'm going to snap at this person, and you catch it. So that is progress, right? We can't do all the things at once. This is a new skill. It takes time to build. You don't become a buff builder, what do they call it? Bodybuilder overnight. You have to start slowly and build up the deep muscles inside first. I don't know much about bodybuilding, but I think something like that. And then eventually you become stronger and stronger. It's the same with this, right? We have to start slowly and honor where we are. We can't really skip steps. So if we see that we are snapping and responding in that way, we might catch it after. Great. That's amazing progress, because before you didn't even notice it was happening. And so then eventually you might be able to notice it more in the moment as it's happening. And again, sometimes apologies are necessary, but it's just acknowledging what's happening. It's noticing what's going on for ourselves in the moment. Okay, anchor and ally. How can I ally with myself and my family over outside expectations? And sometimes it can feel really tangled up, like I talked about earlier. This tradition that's super important and I want to honor it this year, even though it doesn't feel like a fit and I'm having to fight to do this thing that feels so important to me just for the sake of doing it. It might get tangled up because where did it become an expectation that we have to do the exact same thing every year? That rarely happens anywhere in life, right? We're always changing and adapting. And so traditions can change and adapt and grow with us too. And I say that because sometimes it might feel like it's an internal expectation, but if we slow down and untangle that ball of yarn, we might see some tethers to some external expectations, or we might not. And then we need to do a little bit maybe of grief work for ourselves, feeling sad that this tradition is changing, or what does it mean? Is it worth putting all this pressure on and creating this disruption when the goal is actually joy? So how can I ally with peace and joy over hitting these marks of what I think a holiday should look like? So again, slowing down and just taking some inventory and choosing yourself and your family. And micro choices. So again, thinking about that Viktor Frankl quote, it's the micro choices in the moment. What's accessible right now? It might not be possible to do something really big and not engage with XYZ people over the holidays, but how can I do it in the way that feels that middle path, that feels honoring of myself and my family and of the other people? I'll give an example. So I grew up in a family that ate meat, and I was a vegetarian since I was 6. And so my mom did it initially, but we would bring our own meal. It was too complicated to expect that there would be a meal ready for me at that house that we were going to for the holidays. And so we would just cart along a meal that was helpful for me. I know that sounds so silly, but it's a perfect example on honoring myself. I'm not just going to sit there and eat the bread. That's not going to sustain me. I'm going to make a meal and bring it with me so that I have the nourishment that I need. And that is a micro change that's accessible, that I can do, that honors me, as opposed to pretending everything's okay. I'm going to make sure that I'm taken care of. And yeah, I got weird looks having Tupperwares of food that looked funny to everybody else, but my body was well cared for, my blood sugars are regulated, and I didn't have to live off, buns and carrots for a few days. So it was a positive thing to do. But that's what I mean, just these accessible ways to honor ourselves within whatever's going on. All right, integration. Tiny take-home practices. If you get an invitation and you feel that tension rising and you're feeling overwhelmed and you notice that Fawn response coming up, oh wow, yeah, that does really sound like fun. Oh, okay, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Or I need to check my calendar. Or I need to talk with my partner. Whatever it is, build in yourself a buffer, because if we have these tendencies and they've been ingrained, it's almost like driving on the highway. That neural pathway is ingrained and we're asking it to take a side road. And so it can be a really hard shift to do. So we need to build in a pause to reroute so our brain can buffer and figure out a new path. So if in the moment we feel that pressure, we can feel that fawn response coming, we might need to slow down and say, let me get back to you. Or we might fawn and say yes in the moment, or we might think it's okay and then feel overwhelmed later. And then can we give ourselves permission to change plans, or to maybe just go and leave earlier? Or we had this big plan to like do Capilano Lights, and instead we're gonna come hang out and have warm tea instead because that feels okay. Those are all possibilities. It's just about hearing our own system, our own body, and trying to honor it. Yeah, we're gonna do things a little differently this year. And you're naming that it's different. You're naming that it might be a little bit disruptive. And you're owning that it's going to happen. We're not placating. We're not apologizing. It's just true that we're going to do things a little differently this year. That might not be so tiny. That might feel big. And again, maybe this is the year you take inventory on maybe what you want to try to do differently next year. And then you drop some seeds. Or maybe you do it and you do things differently and you're up for a big one. And that's cool too. So the big piece is listening to your body, listening to your system, suspending judgment, suspending that override tendency that we have and have been taught to do. But all the information that our system's telling us, we're listening to it and we're going to give it space. We're going to let it take up space. And we're going to use that information to make a choice of how and what we're going to do next. Okay. So that's all for this one. We have lots more things coming up. We have tons of free resources on our website. We have a monthly newsletter for nourishing support and ongoing upcoming events. So you're welcome to check those out too. And I hope this was helpful for you. I mean, obviously that's the goal, but I hope it was helpful. I hope there was hopefully at least one nugget that you could take away and integrate into your life. And even if it's just, there's no action yet, there's like thoughts and you're percolating on things differently, that's really valuable too, right? Because that is actioning it. You're thinking about it, you're reflecting, and it's kind of the first step before you move into action. Like I said, lots of other opportunities coming up to connect with community. And if you have questions, comments, witty remarks, feel free to reach out. That's our social media handle. That's our website. And the email address is down here too. Admin at Healing Spaces. You'll get Emma, our admin, and she'll forward it over to me if you have anything specific. And there's my email. Perfect. Kelsey at healingspaces.center. Yes, it's spelled the American way. That's our social media handle. So questions, comments, witty remarks, I welcome them all. And I'm curious to see if there was a piece here that spoke to you, or there's something you'd add or do differently. Reach out. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Just some references, and I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you so much. You take care and have a great day. Okay, bye.